More bad news tonight for Labour and Jacinda Ardern. A One News Colmar Brunton poll has National significantly ahead of Labour and able to govern with just ACT, assuming ACT gets one seat. Labour is down, as is Jacinda Ardern's personal popularity. Now, this comes a day after a Newshub Reid Research poll also showed Labour and Jacinda Ardern taking a tumble after a spike in popularity in its previous survey. Our political editor Jane Patterson joins us now from Parliament. Jane, can you run us through these latest figures? What is the One News poll showing?
So National is up to at 47%, which is a very good result for them. Labour is down 3 to 40%. Now the Greens are up 1 to 7, and New Zealand First also up 1 to 4. But that slight increase for those support partners is not going to be much comfort for Labour, because what is happening in this poll and the Newshub poll last night is starting to show that downward decline for the Labour Party vote, and National's vote not only holding up but increasing. So with these polls we do have to look at trend lines, and in the preferred Prime Minister also a bit of a hit for Jacinda Ardern, down to 38 from 41, and Bridges up 3 to 9. Now in terms of Ms Ardern's popularity or preferred Prime Minister rating, it's still very strong when compared to Simon Bridges. But if you look in the Colmar Brunton One News poll, she really hit a high of about 51. After the March 15th attacks, she was very praised highly for the way that she handled that. But since then, we've really seen it tracking down, and each poll has seen her come down a bit each time to 38. So, of course, in the year of delivery for Labour, this is going to be very concerning for them.
Interestingly, the gap is wider between Labour and National in the One News Colmar Brunton poll, but they are generally showing the same trend. The minor parties seem to be almost exactly the same numbers between both polls. So what's going on? Is Labour and the National Party just swapping votes, are they, here?
It seems like National and Labour are duking it out. Now, remember, of course, Labour and Jacinda Ardern have had a pretty rough month or so. She had a very successful trip to the United Nations, but prior to that, days, if not weeks, of negative headlines on the Labour Party sexual assault scandal. We had the reset of Kiwi Build, which really just is now synonymous with a failed policy, and also those warning signs about the economy. So National's really been making the most of that. Simon Bridges has been performing strongly and really sticking to one message, and that's about the impact of this government on people's hip pockets, and that seems to be paying off.
Do we know, were these taken over roughly the same period of time, these polls?
I'm not sure. I can't tell you that. I ducked in here when we found out those
hot off
first
the
results.
Press, Jane.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
Not quite sure about the time frame, but I imagine they would be relatively similar. The Newshub poll was taken from the 2nd to the 9th of October, and they do have slightly different methodology in terms of how they conduct those polls, although both were of 1,000 people.
How much heart will Simon Bridges be taking from this? Because overall his party is firming up numbers and going upwards, but his preferred stakes are still, well, could we say weak?
They are still weak, but again, that's not unusual for for an opposition party leader. We saw Labour Party leaders really struggling to get up into those good high numbers, and part of that is just profile and the mana that the position of Prime Minister gives you to be up making decisions, taking the lead on difficult issues out on that international stage. Now, during those rocky times when Simon Bridges' leadership was under question, he always referred back to the party vote. He said that is the one that counts, and that is true if you are polling at this degree. This is a good result for him, and especially now this one that he could govern alone. It does take a little bit of pressure off, well, it takes a lot of pressure off him as leader. I must say though, there's a long way to go until the election campaign. A huge amount can happen, but this will be very heartening for Simon Bridges and will absolutely help to shore up his leadership, and any potential challenge that he may have been facing will be even more difficult now with an opposition party polling at these numbers.
Yeah, Jane, our producer here, Catherine, has just confirmed to us that those poll periods were virtually the same. One was from the 5th of October to the 9th, the other from the 2nd to the 9th. Will Jacinda Ardern and Labour be slightly panicked by this?
Look, I think they can't be anything but concerned. They've enjoyed good numbers, and of course they'll say that this number and the Newshub poll last night were still well above what the Labour actually achieved at the election. Now, again, National is really honing in on what they say are the failures of the coalition to deliver. Jacinda Ardern saying this afternoon, we have stuff underway. There are many projects, many policies, but there are still some big areas where the promised reforms haven't come or haven't yet come, and that includes education, welfare. Tax reforms basically came to naught. So National has a fair bit of fodder, and Labour will be looking very carefully about how they can present themselves as having delivered, and also just about the feeling that voters have. Do they feel better under this government than they did under the last? Will they have the confidence that the government can continue to keep a strong economy going, to keep employment up? All of those sorts of things become very sharp in voters' minds as that election campaign draws nearer next year.
It's not that far away, is it, Jane? Thanks very much. That's Jane Patterson, our political editor, joining us there from Parliament.